All right. All right. Let's go. Review number 2 here, biological psych. Haven't figured out with this YouTube how to share my screen. Figure that out. Maybe go back to Zoom, and then you guys can see what I'm actually looking at. But okay, so second one is biological psych. A lot to know here. Make sure you get into your review assignment from a couple weeks back. Make sure you're reviewing all of the biological psych stuff that you've already done. I like 2 weeks ago, whatever unit that was, unit 2, unit 3. So make sure you're going back there. That's central nervous system, brain, endocrine system, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So central nervous system, that's brain, brainstem, and spinal cord. It's all about neural communication, right? Neurons and neurotransmitters and how neurons fire. The endocrine system, that's different. Remember, that's hormonal. That's your hormones. You have the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. You have the somatic and autonomic systems, so on and so forth. All right. So make sure you get back into your notes and you're looking at that stuff. Now, this is a brief rundown. Again, I'm recapping a 57-minute long video as quickly as I can. So this is just a rundown. You've got to get back into that review and make sure you're studying that. Okay. So central nervous system, brain, spinal cord, communication network, right? Neural network in the body. The brain is the command center. It sends and receives vital messages. Those messages are sent by neurons. Okay, the spinal cord, that's a communication network. It sends and it is the pathway, I guess, of sending messages from the brain to the body and the body to the brain. Okay, spinal cord also is very vital there in controlling body movements. The PNS, peripheral nervous system, that is everything not in the central nervous system. Okay, so a couple parts here that you need to know for the peripheral nervous system is the somatic. That's the part of the PNS that controls motor movements. It sends sensory information to our brain from our body. So remember, you touch a hot surface, that is sending messages from your fingertips to your brain. Okay. So that is the somatic system. Somatic controls voluntary movements. You're walking, running, throwing, stuff like that. You have afferent and efferent. Afferent with an A neurons, that is sensory information from our body receptors to our brain. So again, you touch a hot or cold surface, afferent neurons are sending those messages to the brain like, oh crap, I just touched something hot. Okay, so afferent with an A also means sensory neurons. Efferent with an E are neurons that are sent from our brain to our body. Okay, maybe it is a message, to remove your hand from that surface. Okay, so the brain is saying, get your hand off there, it's about to do damage. So efferent with an E neurons are sent from our brain to our body. Those are also known as motor neurons, anything that gets your body moving. The autonomic, that is part of the PNS that helps the body go into fight or flight mode. It brings about the necessary energy your body needs, and then it brings about a calming presence. It helps the body go back to, wait for it, homeostasis. Okay, so the autonomic is mostly involuntary stuff, such as breathing, your body temperature, your heart rate, your reflexes, your fight or flight. All that kind of stuff is involuntary. It's natural. It's instinctive. Okay. Now, in the autonomic, you have two parts: the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic is what is bringing about that energy, that fight or flight response. Your body gets going, your heart rate increases, your body temperature increases, your digestion slows down. That is sympathetic. Then you have parasympathetic, which is just the opposite. It's calming. It's bringing your heart rate back down, bringing your temperatures back down, bring your body back to homeostasis. Now your digestion can resume. Okay. So central nervous system, brain, spinal cord, neurons, neurotransmitters, the endocrine, hormones, and glands. They brought up this acronym, SAME. Capital S, capital A, capital M, capital E. Same. Sensory neurons are afferent neurons, and motor neurons are efferent neurons, in case that helps you get a couple questions right on the AP exam. Think about that acronym, SAME. Okay, the brain has 4 lobes and 2 hemispheres. Make sure you go back and review your all the notes that we have on that. The pictures or the graphics on that kind of stuff. So the brain, 4 parts. You have the temporal, you have the parietal, you have the occipital, and you have the frontal. Those are the 4 lobes. A couple things to keep in mind. Broca's area. Broca's area is about speech production. It's about your ability to form correct speech. Your ability to speak, you can think of it that way. That is in the frontal lobe. Okay, so Broca's area, that is speech production, formation, your ability to speak, frontal lobe. Wernicke's area is temporal lobe. That is speech comprehension, your ability to understand spoken words as they are sent to you. Okay, so again, Wernicke's area, that is temporal lobe. Left hemisphere, that is all about analytical, it's intellectual, it's academic, it's logic. That is the right, it's controlling the right side of your body. And then the right hemisphere controls the left side of the body, and it's creativity, it's your emotions, it's your imagination. Okay, so left and right are definitely very opposite. Now, your limbic system, that's part of the brain, has a whole bunch of brain parts, but the limbic system is part of the brain that is it's emotion, it's motivation, it's memories and stuff like that. Okay, so you have the hypothalamus, which is responsible for homeostasis, sleep cycles, hunger, and it actually controls the pituitary gland in your endocrine system. You have the amygdala, that is fight or flight response, that is emotions, and that is very personal memories, like flashbulb memories. You have the hippocampus, that is your long-term memory. Remember the famous HM case study, had amnesia and inability to form new memories. His hippocampus was damaged. You have the thalamus, that is senses, your five senses, almost all your not smell, but your senses, your vision, your hearing, your touch sensations. And then you have the cerebellum, that is voluntary movements, again, running, throwing, walking, that kind of stuff, and maintaining your balance, coordination. Then you got brainstem. This connects the brain to the spinal cord. Messages pass through the brainstem each way. Okay, so your afferent and your efferent, your sensory, your motor neurons, they pass through each way. So brain sending messages to the body, and then the body sending messages to the brain. They all go through the brainstem. Now, what do you have in the brainstem that we need to talk about? You have pons, Pons. You have pons. That is responsible for sleep and eye movement. You have the medulla, that's responsible for involuntary stuff like heartbeat and respiration. Then you have reticular formation. That is trying to bring about your body to correct arousal levels, correct energy levels, maintaining consciousness, stuff like that. Neurocommunication. In neurocommunication, are neurons and neurotransmitters. That's what we're talking about when you see neurocommunication. What's important to know is action potential. That is what allows neurons to carry messages, neurons to fire, neurons to do their job. So they're carrying messages. It's a brief electrical impulse or firing. That is called action, right? So action potential allows neurons to fire and deliver messages all across the central nervous system. Neurotransmitters. You guys know the neurotransmitters, but neurotransmitter imbalances or neurotransmitter errors, whether that's too much or too little, those are responsible for disorders. Maybe somatic, symptoms that you might have. Sorry, hold on a second. I had to plug in my computer. Psychoactive drugs, help restore balance. Again, if there's any kind of issues with neurotransmitters, too little, too much, you take drugs, psychoactive drugs, and it helps, restore balance. It helps fix those issues with neurotransmitters. Remember, you have agonists, which mimic what a neurotransmitter is supposed to be doing. And then you have antagonists, which blocks what a neurotransmitter is supposed to be doing. So if you have too much dopamine, you might take a dopamine antagonist, right? If you have not enough dopamine, you might take a dopamine agonist to mimic what the dopamine should be doing in your body. So go back and look at neuron parts. Okay, you have the diagram from way back when, axon and myelin sheath and dendrites and stuff like that. So go back and look at that, the parts of a neuron, and then go back and look at your neurotransmitter chart. Make sure you know their functions. What is the function of serotonin? What is the function of acetylcholine? And then make sure you know what happens when there's too much acetylcholine in all of them, and when there's too little, when there's a shortage. Okay. Make sure we know the difference between excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters. Remember, excitatory is bringing about action. It's bringing about energy to the body. Inhibitory is slowing down. It's blocking. Okay. All or none principle. You should remember that. It's basic, but the neuron fires completely or it does not fire at all. Okay. There's no partial fire or anything like that. It's all or none principle. It's going to fire completely or not at all. So a couple things you need to know is resting potential. That is when the neuron is ready to go. It's ready to fire. It's ready to communicate. And it's just waiting for that electrical impulse. Okay. And when that happens, that brings the neuron to action potential. Boom. The charge happens. The neuron fires. The messages are delivered. Neuroplasticity. That plasticity, remember, it's pliable. It's shapeable, it's movable, right? It's flexible. The brain can always evolve. We are lifelong learners. You're just as able to learn at age 9 months as you are at year 75. Okay, so we're lifelong learners. Our brain is able to continue to adapt, to develop. It is able to make new synaptic connections, and this is important too. Your brain is able to recover from brain injuries. You can have a concussion, for example, and your brain is able to repair. It is able to recover. States of consciousness, it was tied in there. Sleep cycles is kind of what we're talking about there. Beta waves. Remember, beta waves are when you are alert. It's when you're awake. Those are when beta waves are being used. Alpha waves are being used when you're trying to get closer to a sleep or a resting period, a relaxing period. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Then remember, you have REM, rapid eye movement sleep. The entire cycle takes 90 minutes to 120 minutes. Okay. And then you just repeat and repeat and repeat. Talk about a couple brain scans here. Remember, biological psych, it is all about, actual what we can see, what we can test. So you have an EEG. Those are electrodes on the scalp that measure brain waves, and it can measure if there's some kind of issue there. A CT scan, those are layered x-rays. A CT scan can do all kinds of things. But it's a computerized tomography is what it's called. But again, it's x-rays that are taken from different angles, which means, basically layered. And it's looking through the bones and blood vessels, soft tissue and stuff like that. Sorry, I lost my slide. Let me get back to it. MRI, magnetic waves, I guess, to provide pictures of your organs and your tissue. So it's kind of going a little bit deeper than a CT scan. Then you also have, and this is a little f, but you also have functional MRI. Okay, and functional MRI is a little bit different. Again, it's little f, then it's the big MRI is how you kind of see that spelled. But that is soft tissues and blood. Okay, so what would be the difference there is you're going more into the soft tissues than just major tissues, and you're going into the bloodstream rather than organs. So that's kind of the difference between a functional MRI and an MRI. And the last one was a PET scan. Okay, and that's a positron emission tomography, a PET scan. It uses glucose. Is kind of something you want to know, or trying to find glucose activity. But it's a test that can help reveal the metabolic or biochemical function of your tissues and organs. It's going to put in a radioactive drug or tracer, and that's going to basically light up glucose levels, and it'll let you know what's normal and abnormal about your metabolic activity. Okay, so that it was a really fast. I'm right at 13 minutes. Maybe I'll do another one if I have time that gets back into sleep and some of the neurotransmitters and stuff like that. But again, you guys have charts and you have notes on that. So I don't want to make these longer than I need to. So make sure you are studying that. Make sure you kind of go back and you highlight everything from your biological psych review that I just talked about, and that also highlight what I told you that you need to be going over, like the neurotransmitter charts, the parts of the neuron, and sleep disorders and stuff like that. All right, out of here.